Dick Cheney gave a speech at American University in Washington, D.C., and shockingly, he spoke about torture. But not shockingly, he defended himself on the issue of torture. He doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down and 7 trillion down. He defended himself, the Bush administration, and he still thinks that all these guys are so great. He says, quote, "If I would have to do it all over again, I would. The results speak for themselves." You know, Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney are probably the two worst guys in the entire country. Maybe that's a slight overstatement, but maybe not, because they're actually responsible for the deaths of over 100,000 innocent civilians in Iraq. They're responsible for the deaths of over 4,000 of our brave young men and women, and countless injuries and broken lives and shattered families and displaced people in the Middle East. So I don't know. I don't know if that's an overstatement, but the fact that this guy can say the results speak for themselves, well, that's true, but it speaks to the opposite of what you think it speaks to, in the sense that nothing came out of the torture. What was the number? I forget the exact number. 168 times they tortured Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and then he finally said what they wanted him to say. That's what happens when you torture. John McCain has spoken about this, a guy who was tortured. He spoke about this. Jesse Ventura has spoken about this, a guy who was heavily involved in the military. They say torture doesn't work because people are going to say whatever the fuck you want to hear just to get you to stop. You're not going to get accurate information. What are you, crazy? And of course, with the Bush administration, they wanted to hear something specific to justify the war in Iraq. So you keep torturing, and then you say, mention Iraq. Mention Iraq. And he's going to say Iraq, of course. I'll say Iraq within the first 7 seconds if it gets you to stop fucking torturing me. It's torture. So, yeah, the results do speak for themselves. You heard what you wanted to hear, and then you did what you wanted to do, all the while claiming that, you were standing up for what was just and what was right when you were doing the exact opposite. Then, when talking about waterboarding specifically, he said, quote, "Some people called it torture. It wasn't torture." All right, is that what you do on the weekends, buddy? It's not torture, right? It's so great. What do you go play some golf, relax a little bit, grab a nice waterboard at lunch? Is that what happens? They waterboard you on your patio by your pool outside? I mean, who are you kidding, man? Did you know that we actually took a lot of our enhanced interrogation techniques, as they called it, because apparently they were consulting Orwell when they were coming up with these terms? We took it from a communist Chinese manual on how to torture. That was one of the first stories that I covered doing political commentary. It was back probably 2008. And I discussed that and said, do you believe this shit? Communist Chinese manual on how to torture. And we're using it, and then we said, no, it's not torture. It's enhanced interrogation. Did they say torture? They didn't mean torture. They mean enhanced interrogation. Did you know that our soldiers, not our soldiers, but we put to death others' soldiers when they waterboarded our soldiers? Did you know that? It was in World War II in Japan, when we put them on trial, found them guilty, and put them to death because Japanese soldiers had waterboarded ours. So when other people do it, it's a crime worthy of death. When we do it, it's not even torture. It's enhanced interrogation, and if you disagree, well, you're unpatriotic. I mean, the double standard is so out of this world, and the hypocrisy is so mind-blowing that it makes you question whether or not Dick Cheney himself even really believes it. Or, I mean, look, maybe I don't know what the answer is, but it's only two possible choices. Either he's an idiot and he doesn't get these things and he can't connect these dots and he doesn't understand the concept of hypocrisy, or he gets it and he's just the most brazen liar on the planet. But either way, it speaks horrible about the kind of person he is and the fact that he was the vice president. He was, pulling the puppet strings behind the scenes. There's been a lot of biographies that have come out since the Bush administration left office, and they all basically say it was Cheney who was running the country. He was pulling all of Bush's strings. Bush was just a puppet. And who honestly, who's surprised at that, given as to how George Bush looks and acts? It's pretty clear that he wasn't the one who was leading the charge here, but, I mean, even on top of that, the disregard for the Constitution. Never mind international law, never mind the Geneva Conventions, never mind the Nuremberg Tribunal. I mean, these are all serious issues, and when other countries violate them, we scream and yell and bitch and moan and say we need to attack. How dare they act like that? Imagine Iran was as flippant about international law as we are. We would have nuked them 3 times over by now. But it's not just the disregard for that, it's the disregard for the Constitution. You know, if you're a right-winger, if you're a conservative Republican, and you love to talk about the Constitution and the Second Amendment and states' rights and all that stuff, well, okay, what about the Eighth Amendment? Do you just disregard that one because you're not a fan of it? The Eighth Amendment, protection from cruel and unusual punishment. You know, the government is not allowed to do that, to dole out cruel and unusual punishment. That's exactly what we did. Never mind even habeas corpus being killed, due process being killed. Guantanamo Bay is extrajudicial. You're not allowed to do that. Our Constitution doesn't allow you to do that, to set up an extrajudicial system. Holding people without a trial. That's craziness. That's craziness. But this guy, you know, and that's the problem with the neoconservative movement. It's the most dangerous movement we've seen in this country, arguably ever. Because it's a movement that says, whoa, whoa, whoa. The American system of justice, the Constitution, a nation of laws, that's all out the window, man. We believe in what's called the unitary executive theory. There were books written on this about the Bush administration. And that's what they believed in. And there's another term for that. You know, that's, again, the Orwellian speak. Unitary executive theory. Yeah, that's called a dictator. It's called authoritarianism. It's called fascism. That's the type of system that they liked. And Dick Cheney is the perfect example of what the founders had in mind when they came up with the Constitution and when we actually put laws on the law books. We thought, well, we can't have some guy just overriding these laws. We got to make sure we write them down and say, look, this is the ultimate law of the land. You can't go against this. But Cheney still went against it.